At the age of 10, I accidentally overheard my mother making a phone call. It seemed that she was saying I was a switched wealthy daughter, and should have the surname Gu. My mother's indifference and brutality towards me turned out to have their own reasons. At the age of 11, I paid an adult to conduct a paternity test between my mother and me. The results showed that I was her biological daughter. I put away the report and pretended not to know. Mom, the coming-of-age ceremony will be held at school next Wednesday. Could you please prepare a dress for me as well? The coming-of-age ceremony falls on the same day as my 18th birthday, and I want to look decent for once. My mother stood in the cloakroom and tried on those handmade cheongsams she had specially customized repeatedly. Each time she tried on one, she would pick up the ironed pink dress with diamonds beside it and compare them. I knew that it was another gift for Gu Qing. Come on, take a look. Does this outfit match? She seemed to be in a good mood and her tone was lively, but she still turned a deaf ear to my request. I nodded. Mom, you look great in anything. This sentence was actually true. She has deep-set features and maintains herself well. Over the years, she might forget to beat me, but she never forgets her daily morning run. It's a pity that though she has a face like a flower, her inner nature has long been corrupted. Tidy up. Let's go to the Gu family's place and stay for a while. Over these 18 years, my mother has been taking the excuse that she and Aunt Gu were close friends who grew up together since childhood, and often visited their home. On the surface, it seemed like a deep sisterly bond, but in fact, she was just worried about Gu Qing, whom she thought was her biological daughter. As soon as we entered the Gu family's house, my mother absent-mindedly exchanged a few pleasantries with Aunt Gu, and then busied herself taking care of Gu Qing. Qing, your godmother is here to see you again. Godmother has a gift for you. You will definitely like it. It was exactly the dress from the morning. Would you like to wear it on your coming-of-age ceremony? Qing? Aunt Gu could tell at a glance that the dress was expensive. It was nothing for Aunt Gu, but she knew that our family wasn't wealthy. Ziyuan, you've spent a lot of money on my daughter over the years. You should be nicer to Daodu. Aunt Gu gently stroked my unruly hair with pity, which lacked proper nutrition. My mother beside me didn't even give me a glance. Don't be so polite with me. We were born in the same year and month, and have been good friends ever since. It's only natural that I'm good to Qing. I gave Daodu a dog's name at the beginning, hoping that she would be easier to raise. But in the end, she really bit the hand that fed her and didn't appreciate my kindness. The clothes you gave her before, she thought they were ugly and burned them all by herself. The truth is that she didn't want me to have nice clothes to wear at all, and was even more jealous of Aunt Gu being nice to me. Every time Aunt Gu gave me a gift, as soon as we left the Gu family's house, she would immediately put it on a second-hand website to make some money. Then she would spend the money on buying gifts for Gu Qing. She was afraid that I would have a good life if I returned to the Gu family in the future. However, on Gu Qing's side, she was much colder towards my mother's enthusiasm for giving gifts. Aunt, my mother has already prepared a dress for me. Thank you for your kindness. Come to think of it, she hasn't called my mother godmother for a long time. The first time my mother asked her why she changed the address, she said she didn't like it. She was also scolded by Aunt Gu for a while, saying that she was impolite, but she insisted on not changing it back. I once wondered if it was because I suddenly stopped talking to Gu Qing that it affected my mother. In the end, because of my mother's soft heart, she let Gu Qing call her whatever she liked, believing that feelings didn't depend on the address. Gu Qing suddenly glanced at me and said, Aunt, why don't you leave this dress for Daodu? She is more suitable for it than me. Not only did Gu Qing reject my mother's gift, but she also said to give it to me. My mother couldn't help blurting out, that bitch doesn't deserve this dress at all. She doesn't even deserve to pick up the garbage you don't want. Realizing that she had spoken harshly, my mother quickly forced a smile and tried to gloss over it. Qing, you can't be too kind. You need to see clearly which people are worth making friends with, and which aren't. Let's not talk about these things. How did you do in the first mock exam this time? Gu Qing responded politely, Thank you for your concern, Aunt. I should have no problem getting into my ideal university. My mother looked full of gratification, and her tone was proud. Godmother knew that you could definitely do it. Bring your report card, and let Godmother take a photo of it. Godmother will keep it for you. Although I was used to it, my mother's loving gaze made my heart ache for a moment. Is this the real face of her as a mother? Is this the treatment I should have received? By the way, Aunt Daodu also did very well in the first mock exam this time. Hearing her daughter mention me repeatedly, my mother's face darkened slightly. Don't I know which rank she got in the exam? Don't cover up for her. Okay, Godmother won't bother you with your studies. After you finish the college entrance examination, Godmother will definitely give you a big gift. After we said goodbye and entered the house, My mother kicked me down. As if she wasn't satisfied with just kicking me down, she found a household stick and walked towards me, specifically aiming at the places that could be covered by clothes to whip me. Was it you who told Ching that you wanted this dress? You're a liar yourself. Only Ching is kind enough to make excuses for you. With your lousy grades, you still say you did well in the exam? After a few more blows with the stick, I curled up on the ground and hugged my head. I endured all this in silence. Anyway, it would be over soon. When the results of the third mock exam were announced, I nervously presented the faked bottom rank report card to my mother for her signature. She was already quite accustomed to such a situation, and her eyes were filled with nothing but disdain and annoyance. I knew it. You're just like the mud that can never be shaped into a wall, she said coldly, pursing her lips. Every time you have the nerve to ask Ching to brag about your good grades. You're really shameless. Having a daughter like you, if I were to be pessimistic, I would have committed suicide long ago. As she continued to scold me while munching on melon seeds, she seemed to remember something suddenly in the middle of her words, and promptly closed her mouth. Then she casually spat the melon seed husks on me. I felt a wave of nausea. Yet I didn't even have the courage to shake off the husks, for I was well aware that the slightest resistance would bring even more dreadful consequences. I'm going to your Aunt Goo's for dinner later. Wash the clothes, mop the floor, and tidy up the dishes, my mother ordered imperiously. After that, she immersed herself in her own world, and didn't look at me anymore. I lowered my head silent, while my thoughts drifted far away. I couldn't help but wonder secretly, if my mother knew that I was her biological daughter, would her attitude undergo a drastic change? At the thought of this, the corners of my mouth curled up slightly, and a glimmer of anticipation welled up in my heart. Soon the moment of truth would arrive. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my scalp. My mother fiercely grabbed my hair, and smashed my head against the wall. Are you mute? Did you hear what I told you? She roared furiously. I really don't know whose inferior genes you've inherited. If you could be even a fraction as excellent as Ching, I might think more highly of you. Day after day, such brutal acts repeated. The paint on the wall gradually peeled off with each impact, revealing the rough, pitted cement wall inside. Every time, the coarse wall could easily scrape my skin. Although I was already used to it, I still couldn't help but clench my teeth and take a sharp breath due to the intense pain. Blood trickled slowly down my forehead and dripped onto the ground, forming crimson bloodstains. I slowly raised my head and stared straight into my mother's eyes. My voice trembled slightly, yet it also carried a hint of stubbornness. Really, if I could achieve good grades like Ching, would you treat me better? My blood-smeared face seemed to startle my mother for a moment. She subconsciously took a step back. But soon, she regained her overbearing demeanor, putting her hands on her hips and pointing at my nose. You? Not to mention that it's impossible for you to achieve Ching's grades. The most important thing is your character. The dirty genes flowing in your body. I grabbed her finger. As that moment was approaching day by day, it wasn't just my mother whose excitement couldn't be contained. I was also filled with anticipation. How are my genes dirty? Aren't I your child? I questioned. My mother seemed to be electrocuted. She immediately withdrew her hand in disgust, and wiped it on her body several times, as if I were something filthy. You, what are you going crazy about? Get out of my sight, she shouted angrily. Anyway, you're just a bastard, and that's a fact that can never be changed. After saying that, she took a quick glance at the time and rushed out the door, clearly eager to see the daughter she thought was her own. In the past, when my mother went to Ching's house for dinner, she always took me with her. At that time, I was the perfect excuse for her visit. Meanwhile, she also intended to let Aunt Goo see my miserable state on purpose. She believed that the more down and out I was, the more tormented Aunt Goo would be when she recalled it in the future, because she firmly believed that I was Aunt Goo's biological daughter. However, in recent years, my health has been deteriorating. My stomach problems have become more and more serious, and I can't even help vomiting in front of others. My mother thought that my appearance would affect Ching's appetite. In her heart, Ching was of utmost importance, so she rarely took me there during mealtimes. After my mother left, I endured the pain and carefully completed every task she assigned, tidying up the house in an orderly and spotless manner. There was only one room that I had never set foot in, and that was my mother's room. She installed a combination lock on the door and kept me at bay. However, I knew the password. It was my original due date. My mother always believed that it was the real birthday of her daughter. With a clear unlocking sound, I slowly pushed open the door of my mother's room. The room was not large, and everything inside was in full view. On all four walls were pasted photos of Ching from childhood to adulthood, from her babbling and toddling to her heroic posture, running in the school sports meet. Every moment of her growth was carefully recorded. There were also photos of her and my mother on each birthday. In the photos, they were smiling brightly and looked extremely affectionate. In one corner of the wall, there was still a blank space. I knew that a copy of Qingqing's third mock exam report card and her upcoming college entrance examination report card would soon be pasted there. I gently turned to the latest page of my mother's diary. It read, "Qingqing, you will understand mother's good intentions one day. In recent years, you have become increasingly cold towards me, and you don't even call me godmother anymore. It doesn't matter. After you finish the college entrance examination, you will return to my side. 18 years have passed, and mother has finally been waiting for this day. At that time, you will also see through the hypocrisy of the Gu family. You will know how much mother has sacrificed for you." Looking at the content in the diary, I found it extremely absurd and couldn't help laughing out loud. The laughter grew louder and louder until my stomach ached and tears welled up in my eyes. "Mom, you're really a big joke," I muttered to myself. In early June, the weather in Nanjing was already unbearably hot. With the last stroke, my college entrance examination came to a successful end. Recently, I have been living a particularly peaceful life because my mother's entire attention has been focused on Qingqing. She was more nervous about Qingqing's college entrance examination results than anyone else. Even if Qingqing might not need it, she still carefully cooked a pot of soup every early morning and brought it over with great care. When the college entrance examination results were announced, Qingqing indeed achieved excellent results. She was more than qualified to enter the best 985 university in Nanjing, and was not much inferior to those admitted to Tsinghua and Peking University. This was originally Qingqing's plan. She wanted to stay close to her family. When my mother learned of Qingqing's results, she was so excited that she almost lost her mind. Her smile spread from ear to ear. "Thank God. Great, great. I knew Qingqing could do it," she exclaimed, pacing back and forth in the room. "I'm finally going to win." Just then, a knock on the door interrupted my mother's cheers. Opening the door, we saw the staff from the admissions office standing at the door. "Excuse me, is this the home of Shen Daodu?" "Hello, I'm from the admissions office of Peking University," one of them said politely. "Hello, Auntie. Congratulations. I'm from the admissions office of Tsinghua University," the other added with a smile. After seeing off the staff from the admissions office, my mother looked at me suspiciously, narrowing her eyes and sizing me up and down. Her eyes were full of doubt and disbelief. "You, people from Tsinghua and Peking University, are actually vying for you? Did you cheat?" she questioned sharply. I sneered, filled with disappointment in her. How could one cheat in the college entrance examination? "Aren't you happy that I did well? Mom, tell me, should I go to Tsinghua or Peking University?" My mother covered her head, as if she had received a huge blow, and kept muttering, "Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. How could you possibly do better than Qingqing? Have you been acting all this time? Do you know something?" As she spoke, she walked towards me menacingly, her hands firmly gripping my neck, with a fierce light in her eyes. I exerted all my strength, using my hands to pry open a small gap, and managed to speak with a hoarse voice. "This is a surprise for you, Mom. You always said that I'm good for nothing, but I'm much better than Qingqing, you know." The force on my neck finally loosened, and then a heavy slap landed on my face. "Impossible. You die, go die," my mother roared hysterically. The slap was so powerful that I blacked out and fainted. When I woke up again, I found myself locked in the room. I desperately twisted the door lock, trying to break free from this confinement. At this time, my mother's cold voice came from outside the door. "Stay in the room quietly until the end of the college entrance examination voluntary filling period. You scum don't deserve to go to college at all. Don't you dare ruin my plans." I slumped helplessly on the ground. Everything was just as I had expected. Mother, thank you for being as cruel and heartless as ever." Finally, after a long period of imprisonment, I saw the light of day again. My mother took me to Qingqing's entrance to university banquet. It was said to be Qingqing's own wish. She only hoped to celebrate this important moment with her family. Therefore, in the entire private room, there were only me, my mother, and Qingqing's family. After the meal, my mother cleared her throat and pretended to be solemn. "Wenxin Ziyuan, I have something to tell you. I just found out that when Wenxin and I gave birth together, the nurse swapped our children. No wonder I always felt that there was a special connection between me and Qingqing. I really like this child no matter how I look at her. I know it's hard for you to accept this at once. Here is the nurse's recording." In the recording, a female voice said guiltily, "I'm sorry. This matter has been weighing on my mind for a long time. Now I'm being punished for my mistake back then. After I swapped the children, I always wanted to find a chance to tell the truth, but I was afraid of losing my job. The Gu family has power and influence, and I was afraid they would do something to me." After listening to the recording, the scene was plunged into a deathly silence. Aunt Gu looked utterly astonished, tightly gripping Gu Qing's hand, as if fearing to lose something precious. Uncle Gu also furrowed his brows, his hand on his forehead, muttering to himself. How could this be? How did the hospital handle this? Mother feigned distress, sighing and saying, Yes, I never expected them to be so careless. Fortunately, both children have grown up under our watchful eyes. I understand that you're reluctant to part with Qingqing. After all, my daughter is so outstanding. But you also need to understand my feelings as a mother. Who wouldn't want to raise their own biological child? Especially since you know that not long after I got pregnant with Qingqing, Shen Jie passed away. Qingqing is the only child I have with him. Although Daodu is a bit worrying, I believe you can provide her with a better life. Only then did the Gu couple turn their gaze towards me, their eyes filled with deep pity. At that moment, I was emaciated, my arms so thin that they were nothing but skin and bones, with joints that protruded prominently. After a long silence, Aunt Gu kept rubbing Gu Qing's hands, seemingly pondering various solutions in her mind. Just as I was about to speak, Gu Qing preempted me. She seemed extremely calm, as if not perturbed by the truth revealed just now. Such a major matter can't be decided based solely on the one-sided words of a nurse, she said calmly. Let's do a paternity test. If Daodu and I were really swapped, of course I will return to my biological mother's side. Mother hurriedly nodded in agreement. All right. We'll listen to you, Qingqing. My daughter is so smart. As she spoke, she glanced at Aunt Gu, a fleeting hint of disdain flashing in her eyes, and then quickly resumed her sorrowful expression. The paternity test would take 3 days. During these 3 days, Aunt Gu took the initiative and let me stay in the Gu family. Mother thought that 3 days wouldn't make a difference and readily agreed. Although it wasn't my first time entering this house, I couldn't help but sigh. The Gu family was really large and warm. I couldn't help but think that if there hadn't been that mistaken baby swap, I should have spent a happy 18-year life here. I sat nervously on the sofa, and the 3 members of the Gu family all fixed their eyes on me. At the thought that I might be her biological daughter, Aunt Gu's tears couldn't stop streaming down. Aunt Gu, please don't cry. Qingqing must be your biological daughter, I said. They were such a kind and wonderful family that I really couldn't bear to see them sad. Look at Qingqing. Her appearance clearly shows the resemblance to you and Uncle Gu. My words seemed to slightly ease the oppressive atmosphere. Aunt Gu came forward and gently took my hand, asking with concern, Daodu, I heard that you haven't filled out your college application yet. Why is that? Qingqing said you did really well in the exam. In my heart, I was thinking, it's all because my mother tried to ruin your biological daughter. She wanted me to be inferior to Qingqing in every aspect. But I just smiled and replied, Auntie, I have other plans. Don't worry about me. On the day when the paternity test results were released, my mother was almost crazy with excitement. She had been waiting for this day for 18 long years. When the staff took out the report, Aunt Gu and Uncle Gu received it with trembling hands. They hesitated for a long time, reluctant to open it. Even after opening it, they dared not look directly. After all, Gu Qing was the daughter they had raised for 18 years. People's hearts are made of flesh, and even without a blood relationship, the deep affection had already taken root in their hearts. I stepped forward and loudly announced the test result. Based on the existing data and DNA analysis results, it is supported that Gu Wenxin and Gu Ziyuan are Gu Qing's biological mother and biological father. Aunt Gu, Uncle Gu, Gu Qing is your biological daughter. It was my mother who Qingxin others and made a mistake. Knowing the truth, Aunt Gu finally felt a great sense of relief. She tightly hugged Gu Qing, gently stroking her hair. However, my mother instantly collapsed, screaming hysterically, Impossible! Shen Daodu, you must be deliberately causing trouble. She snatched the paternity test report and examined it repeatedly. But no matter how many times she looked, the result remained unchanged. Is there a mistake? Was the blood sample taken wrongly during the collection? The staff patiently explained to her that the company had full process monitoring that could be checked. If necessary, it could be retrieved at any time. So she rushed to the monitoring room and stared intently at the surveillance screen without blinking. After coming out of the monitoring room, she slumped to the ground muttering, Qingqing is not my child. Then who is my child? I slowly squatted down in front of her and said softly, Mom, I am your child. As I spoke, I took out the report from 7 years ago and handed it to her. She took it in a daze. After seeing the words on it, her face was filled with shock. You are my daughter. Then back then, why weren't you taken to the Gu family? I stood up, stretched my body, and said indifferently, what else could it be? You were deceived. My mother stared at me with wide eyes. I want to do another test. I don't believe it. Where's Qingqing? I pressed her shoulder, helplessly saying, they left long ago. Wake up. Look at me carefully. Don't you know who I look like in your heart? For the first time in 18 years, she really looked at me. Her eyes were focused and complex until my face gradually overlapped with the image of her late husband in her memory. She couldn't help but reach out her hand to touch my face, but I sidestepped to avoid it. It was too late. Her hand froze in mid-air, looking a bit awkward. After all, for 18 years, she had regarded me as an enemy. Now that she discovered I was her biological daughter, anyone would feel mixed emotions. Finally, this farce came to an end. Mother followed me home. For the next 3 days and 2 nights, she neither ate nor drank. She was like a mad person, constantly muttering, "How could this be? How could this be?" When she returned to her room and saw the photos of Gu Qing all over the wall, she suddenly let out a scream and frantically tore down all the photos. In the end, she didn't even want to step into that room again and could only sleep in the living room. One day, I cooked lunch and ate it alone. Just after I finished eating, Mother suddenly sat up like a carp jumping out of water and said viciously, "I'm going to find that bitch and ask her clearly." I got up to clean the dishes and said calmly, "You mean that nurse surnamed Chen? She has already retired and emigrated." In fact, after the paternity test, I found my birth certificate at home, and also a note with an address and phone number. I took the bus alone, and walked a long way to find that nurse. After introducing myself, she was so guilty that she didn't dare to look me in the eye. I asked her why she didn't swap me and Gu Qing. She told me that my mother had saved her mother's life on the street that year, and she was very grateful. But swapping children was illegal and against human ethics. She really couldn't bring herself to do it. After all, she was also a mother. By putting herself in my mother's shoes, she chose to deceive my mother by saying that the swap had been done. Since then, she secretly sent my mother a sum of money every year. My mother always thought it was the insurance money from my father's accidental death. Before I left, the nurse asked me, "Will you hate me for not giving you a wealthy life?" I turned back and said to her, "I'm very grateful to you." Back in the present, I noticed that the scrutiny in my mother's eyes became more intense. Suddenly, she dumped the contents of her bag and found the paternity test with me. She grabbed me and questioned, "7 years ago? This report was done 7 years ago. You knew it all along. You know everything, even about that nurse. Daudu, why didn't you tell me earlier? Everything is ruined. You should have had a better future." I gently leaned against the living room wall and said slowly, "Mom, do you remember when I first got the first place in the grade? It was 7 years ago. At that time, I already knew that I was your biological daughter. I was so happy and thought that mother must be worried about my poor study, so she wanted to send me to the Gu family. I wanted to prove to her that I didn't need that. So I studied desperately, saving my breakfast money to buy tutoring books. Finally, I got the first place. I carefully made a gift box and put the paternity test in it. I ran home happily and stood in front of her saying, "Mom, I got the first place in the whole grade. I want to give you a gift." However, what greeted me was her cold face and ruthless accusations. "So it was you who got the first place. Did you cheat to push Ching Ching down? You little slut, daring to snatch Ching Ching's things. I'll beat you to death." Before I could even deny it, the clothes hanger rained down on me, and the gift box was knocked into the corner. Seeing the corner of the paper sticking out of the box, I suddenly felt that whether I was her biological daughter or not didn't seem to matter anymore. My eyes refocused on the mother in front of me, and I continued, "7 years ago, I planned to tell you. Since then, I never got the first place again. I never competed with your Ching Ching for the first place. Every year, I put my real report card and the paternity test report under the faked one. The truth was right in front of you. As long as you turned one more page, you would know who I am." That paternity test paper was covered with the pen marks of your signature. Having finished speaking, I shook my head with a bitter smile. "No, you won't believe anything I say. You only believe in yourself. Even if you had seen it, you would have thought it was false." "Daudu, I was wrong. How could I have thought it was false? You should have told me directly. Why didn't you tell me more times? I'm your mother. Didn't I do all this for you?" The look in my mother's eyes, devoid of any remorse yet seemingly sincere, sent a shiver down my spine. As if suddenly remembering something, she tightly grasped my hand and said urgently, "Right, Daudu, quickly call Tsinghua and Peking universities and ask if they can admit you exceptionally. How could you ruin your future just out of pique?" As she spoke, she stuffed the phone into my hand. I threw the phone to the ground in anger and said, "Do you really care about my future? You just don't want to lose to Aunt Gu and everything. Don't make yourself out to be so great. You can act in the Gu family, but don't pretend in front of me." Having been hit on the spot about her true thoughts, my mother gasped for breath and raised her hand high, about to slap me. I grabbed her wrist coldly and said, "What, want to hit me again? Haven't you hit me enough in these 18 years? My mother instantly deflated. Only then did she remember again that I was her biological daughter. Yes, I was jealous of Gu Wenqin. We were born in the same hospital and grew up together. I was prettier and smarter than her. Why did she marry Gu Ziyuan and live a good life? while I married a good for nothing and lost my husband early. She was always showing off her happiness, which was really annoying. When we were pregnant at the same time, she always said she would make her child the happiest in the world. I thought this was the only thing that could make her unhappy. God help me, and we both had daughters. Just thinking about causing waves in her smooth sailing life made me so excited that I couldn't sleep. A smug smile appeared on my mother's face, but soon she realized she had completely lost. She grabbed her hair wildly, laughing and crying at the same time. Once, I also thought that Aunt Gu must have done something wrong to my mother, to make my mother use such a despicable means to take revenge. But every time I interacted with Aunt Gu, she was so gentle and kind. She never disliked me for my slovenliness, nor was she malicious towards me, because of my mother's slander. Instead, she always urged my mother to be nicer to me. Occasionally, I could hear about a different mother from her. She said that when my mother was young, she was smart, beautiful, and decisive in doing things. When she said she would go out to make a living, she really went alone. She envied my mother. Probably everything changed when my mother got married. Regarding my father, whom I had never met, I had heard a little. He was a man who loved to brag. When my mother was drunk, she would cry in front of his memorial tablet. "You said you would make me happier than Gu Wenxin. You big liar." However, all her misfortunes had nothing to do with Aunt Gu. I didn't know when her heart began to distort, until it became incurable. I sighed helplessly, grabbed my school bag, turned around, and walked out the door, just wanting to escape this home that made me so exhausted. I placed my ID card on the front desk of the internet cafe to register. Aunt Bai Feng, the owner of the internet cafe, saw me and a surprised smile instantly lit up her face. "Dudu, finally, you don't have to come to surf the internet furtively at night anymore." The first time I met Aunt Bai Feng was in the dead of night 3 years ago. At that time, there were still the marks of my mother's fingernails on my face, and my arms were covered with bruises. I walked straight to the front desk and said straightforwardly that I wanted to surf the internet, but the fee could only be paid a month later. The owners of other internet cafes all thought I was daydreaming. At that time, I was also determined to take a desperate gamble. I thought that if it didn't work out here, I was afraid I could only continue to sink in this terrible world. But Aunt Bai Feng didn't hesitate at all, and directly opened a single room for me. Later, I asked her if she wasn't afraid that I was a delinquent girl who would stop at nothing to surf the internet, and was idle and without learning. She smiled and said that after running an internet cafe for so many years, she could tell at a glance that I wasn't that kind of person. She also joked, "Besides, which delinquent girl would come to surf the internet with such a heavy school bag on her back?" A month later, I returned the internet fee to her with double the amount as promised. From then on, that room became my exclusive live streaming room. Every week, I would secretly slip out of home for 3 days, and stay up all night in the live streaming room, doing exercise books one after another, without saying a word the whole time. This novel live streaming content attracted many people. Some even recorded the live stream as study materials. Now in one corner of the room, the exercise books I have done are piled up like a mountain, twice as tall as me. Of course, I also received generous tips, which are enough to support my living expenses and tuition fees for the next few years. Today, I came to the internet cafe to confirm the final information. Aunt Bai Feng stood behind me, sipping the milk tea I brought, and asked curiously, "Which country are you going to?" I answered truthfully, "The UK." In fact, as early as 3 years ago when I came here, I had already planned to study abroad. This was also the reason why I was so persistent in going to Guqing's school, because that school had more resources for studying abroad. I had already personally borne the consequences of my mother's mistakes. From now on, the days ahead would be a brand new life of my own. Before leaving the internet cafe, Aunt Bai Feng hugged me tightly. I felt something drip on my shoulder. At that moment, my eyes welled up with tears and I whispered, "Thank you, Aunt Bai Feng." Over the past 3 years, she had done her best to protect me. After walking out of the internet cafe, I went to the Gu family's place. I secretly stuffed 2 stacks of cash into their mailbox, which was the tuition fee for my 3-year high school study. When I got home, I saw a table full of dishes. At a glance, they were all the dishes that Gu Qing liked to eat. My mother greeted me with a big smile. "Dowdy, you're back. Mom has cooked the meal. Come and eat quickly." I was full of doubts, not knowing what she was up to. As soon as I sat down, my mother said again, "Dowdu, if you don't like your current name, let's choose a new one." I wanted to give the Gu family's daughter a humble name back then, but now it's used on my own daughter. I regret it now. I took a few bites of the food. For me, these dishes were too greasy and hard to swallow. After reluctantly eating a few mouthfuls, a sudden sharp pain hit my abdomen, and I couldn't help but retch at the table. My mother hurriedly came to my side and patted my back clumsily. "Mom forgot that you have a weak stomach. It's all my fault." I neglected to take care of you before. I know I was wrong. From now on, Mom will definitely be good to you. Let's change your name. You and Mom will start over. You're so smart. If you repeat a year of high school, you will definitely be able to get into Tsinghua or Peking University. I broke free from her and took a few steps back, saying coldly, actually, my stomach problem is not because of bad diet. I've always known that health is the foundation of everything. Even with limited conditions, I try to keep my 3 meals regular. Even the day after an all-night live stream, I try to rest as much as possible. My illness was caused by you, making me sick to my stomach. I looked her straight in the eyes and continued. Every time I close my eyes, I think about how an innocent girl almost grew up being tortured by you like I was. Just thinking about it makes me feel nauseous. My mother looked at me in confusion and argued. Dowdu, I didn't know. I really didn't know you were my daughter at that time. Even if you had known, so what? I couldn't help slapping the table and interrupting her, roaring angrily. This still can't change the fact that you once thought about, planned, and implemented the harm to Aunt Gu's daughter. It's just that you didn't succeed in the end. If you had really swapped us successfully, would Qingqing deserve to be treated like that by you? What did Aunt Gu do wrong? What did Qingqing do wrong? Even now, you still show no sign of remorse. However, the truth is that harming others eventually harms oneself. Even if I had been swapped with Qingqing successfully, I wouldn't be grateful for your deliberate efforts. A person with your moral character doesn't deserve to be anyone's mother. I've had enough of staying in this abyss with you. From now on, take care of yourself. After listening to my words, my mother finally came to her senses and asked in a panic, You're leaving? You have no money and can't go to college. Where can you go? I ignored her, walked straight past her, and went back to my room to take the luggage that I had packed long ago. When I was about to go out, she held my clothes tightly, looking at me without saying a word. I took a step forward forcefully, and most of my long, worn coat was torn off by her. The large and small scars on my body were thus completely exposed in front of her eyes. She was stunned on the spot, her hands drooping weakly, and she no longer stopped me. Sitting in the waiting seat at the airport, the sunlight shone on me through the huge floor-to-ceiling windows, dazzling and warm. This was my first time going on a long journey, and it was even abroad. Inevitably, I was a bit nervous, and my hands unconsciously rubbed together. I kept comforting myself in my heart that no matter how difficult it was, it couldn't be worse than the past. Suddenly, a hand handed me a sun-shaped doll. I looked up in surprise and found it was Gu Qing. You're really good at leaving without saying goodbye, she said with a smile. You were like this when you were 10, and you still are now. I opened my mouth slightly, at a loss for words, and could only lower my head. Gu Qing, I don't deserve it, I stammered. Gu Qing gently placed her warm hand on the back of mine and said softly, I heard it rains a lot in the UK. Take care. After the plane took off, I opened the doll and found a note inside, which read, We have a long future ahead. Will you? Wasn't this the top donor in my live streaming room? When the water is too clear, there are no fish. I couldn't help but raise the corners of my mouth, so it was her who had been silently supporting me all along. The end.